In these next set of videos, we're going to talk about filters and smart filters. But before we talk about filters, we have to talk about the good and the bad of what you can do with these filters. The filters in Photoshop really haven't changed in maybe 20 years. They've added some blurs, but besides that, the filters that I grew up on, where when I first learned Photoshop, I would learn crazy filter techniques. You don't really do that anymore. So let's have a quick discussion. I'm going to go into 0, 1 filters, and we just have, well, this duck. And there's some filters that are useful, and then there's most of the filters that are just bad. Okay, so if I go to filter, and you can see I have blurs and blur gallery. These are the most useful filters in the bunch. Okay, being able to match a blur to a photograph, being able to create depth with blur, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad filter. Okay, but most of everything else, we can add a little noise, that's okay. Reduce noise, that's good. But when you start going into the stylized filters, diffuse, emboss, okay, we hit okay. That's not good. Okay, now most of these filters had purposes at one time. The emboss filter was meant to be used with a blending mode to create a little beveled edge. These days you don't need to do that. Okay, but however, a lot of young designers will then discover these and go, oh look, it looks like, well, I don't know what that looks like, but it just looks bad. Okay, so if I go to filter, stylize, like if you're brand new to Photoshop, I encourage you to just go through all of them and get them out of your system. Like go to extrude, click the pyramids button, we've all done it, and we hit OK, and you're like, hey, that's kind of cool because it's pyramids, all right? But, and there's tons of tutorials online on how to manipulate these filters to create something maybe interesting, but there's nothing better than good design, okay? So if you start with good design, you won't need to use these filters. For the most part, if I go into filter, distort, some of these distortions can be useful. Just be aware of why you want to use them. There's not much reason to twirl a duck like so, but again, get it out of your system, give it a shot. Some of the offset filters, that's useful for making patterns, maximum, minimum, high pass. There's a few of these filters that are useful, but for the most part, just worry about the blur and the blur gallery. Those are the most useful filters, and the rest of them, you'll kind of discover and find uses as you go.